Oh, it's Kim. I am Kim Howerton. For those of you that don't know, I'm trying to get better at actually introducing myself just in case, because sometimes people randomly come across my videos and they're like, who is this lady and why is she talking? So you might still feel that way after watching the video for a minute, but I should introduce myself. I'm Kim Howerton. I am a health and wellness coach. I have lost over 130 pounds over a long period of time because why do things fast? And I am an author and I have excitement. So I got a preview copy of the new book. It is not out in stores until August 26th, but you can pre-order your copy. And I just wanted to show you, people have said, what's the difference between the new book and the old book? And I just want to show you the difference in thickness. But I don't know where's the there it is. The difference in thickness. It's a lot thicker, and yes, it is a little smaller, but there's more wasted space here, so it's about the same amount of words per page. So it's a lot more book is the answer that we've got. So anyway, preview copy, and it's coming soon. So they send it to the authors before, obviously, so we can double check things and have that. But this will be out in stores the end of August. You can pre-order it now in on many bookstores apparently, but certainly on Amazon, and you will get it delivered to you. And so it's got a bunch of tests. We did make some changes to the recommended tests, just in terms of streamlining it. So all the tests that were in there previously are still in here, all the explanations. We've added some explanations for tests. We've streamlined recommendations for people who are a little more like concerned about a budget, which ones are like level 1 necessary, then what do you go to from there? So we really drilled down. There's a very extensive section on female hormones, and what those are supposed to look like and what they do. We talked about thyroid. That was in the first book, but still in there. And then we go through and talk about all sorts of causes of death and like I know that sounds kind of dramatic, but in terms of like what should we be checking on in our body to protect ourselves from things that tend to kill people, or to keep an eye on that. So we go into all of that. And so there's all of the good stuff that was in the first book is still in the second book, but we added a bunch of stuff. So yay. I wanted the side to be red so it was easily seen on your bookshelf. So that I got that. So anyway, hopefully that is all coming together. I am glad to be here with you. We're just going to do a quick one today. Lots of stuff going on. I am working on a bunch of things. So that's what's going on. I am also sadly waiting for my hairdresser to come back in town and do something with my hair. We'll see what we do next. So who has questions? Thanks, Betsy. Thanks, Julie. Who has questions? Who has things they want me to talk about today? I have been talking about frequently recently my experience with going on some exogenous hormones. I've been talking about weight loss. I always talk about weight loss, and the book and the upcoming program on training health coaches with Ken and Dr. Berry. No, Dr. Ken Berry and Nisha Berry are running a program to train coaches in the proper human diet. And I'm just giving them a hand with that. I'll be one of the instructors, and along with Alyssa, who is super awesome. So we're all chipping in on making sure the program is as good and helpful as possible, because one of the experiences we've all discussed with each other, and I know is Ken and Nisha's most important sort of central value, is wanting to make sure that we're putting coaches out in the world who are confident and skilled, not just here's your credential, because there are a lot of programs that will give you a credential, say like, yes, I passed the test that this school offers to say I know what I'm talking about, but like get to the end and they're like, oh, but I don't really know how to get clients that well, and I kind of know in like general, but I'm not really that good. You don't necessarily feel ready, and it's like, no, want people to be ready and like ready to go out in the world and feel confident. So I know that's really important to Nisha, and so making sure I'm doing my part to help out. So that's been on the agenda. Enrollment is open for that. Um, and I didn't do it because I'm bad at preparation, apparently. I will put a link to the program in this video once I'm done here, so that if you're like, what? You can go. There's an application for the Proper Human Diet certification. And so that enrollment is currently open in July anyway, in this first part of July. It looks like it's going to get filled up. So if you're thinking about it, make sure you apply. And so that's kind of what's been going on, dealing with those things, and doing meal prep. And I'm in maintenance right now, just maintaining the weight. I'm trying out different recipes for possible future cookbooks, and that's kind of my life right now. Working with clients, certainly something that's different in my world compared to previous years is the number of clients I have who've decided, potentially to go on GLP-1s, and how that's changed my coaching and how I've worked with those people. I am not attached to a prescriber. I don't, it's not something I focus on, but I work with people as they come to me. And so if that's something people are interested in, I work with them through that. And so, so I've gotten some good experience through that, being able to navigate those waters. So that's been different, because certainly when GLP-1s first came out, I was skeptical. I was like, oh, I'm worried. I kind of had it. I'll just be honest. I have a negative Nancy. I often, I'm like, it's new, I don't like it. That's just who I am sometimes. And then after a while, I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. And so, so I thought about it and did some study, and so anyway, so now I'm like, okay, they're not on my absolute no list, and so I I like to know the costs, the benefits, the downsides, all that. And so that's something I've had more experience with this year than any previous year in terms of working with people that are taking GLP-1s. And people often will think, well, why is someone taking GLP-1 actually working with a coach? And the answer is, there almost no doctors give you any guidance about how to deal with what you're experiencing. And so, and how to maintain good eating habits, even with the use of these kinds of things. And so, I'm not throwing my clients out. I'm not like, you're doing that, you're out of this house, young lady. No, I'm like, all right, let's make it work. Like, let's make sure you're doing this in the healthiest possible way. I have some family members on them. I've seen some family members not do it in the healthiest possible ways, and said, oh, that's why having coach support is important. So I'm not on the prescribing end. I'm not putting people on these, none of that. But if someone were to come to me, my job is to make things work for people, or unless I'm like categorically against it, in which case I'm just honest about that. But I'm not categorically against them. I'm just willing to meet people where they're at. So that's something that's changed in my coaching practice over the last year that wasn't there before. And it sort of changed the landscape around a lot of these things. One of the things that I used to have to coach around a lot was appetite management, right? Because when you're not taking a drug that changes your appetite, you have to manage your appetite a lot more consciously. And then these people, appetite is not such an issue. And so that's a very different thing to coach through. Then it's more about making sure you're actually getting your nutritional needs met, because your hunger isn't necessarily driving those needs. So anyway, just an interesting thing. I'm just throwing things out there if anybody wants to talk about anything. Julie says, I'm concerned about the long-term effects of GLP-1s. Yeah, I mean, obviously, any drug, you got to consider the side effects, and you've got to consider long-term side effect consequences. GLP-1s themselves have actually been on the market for a very long time. The main difference in the current batch is the strength at which they're being used, right? They're being used at they're stronger, they're more effective doses than they used to be given in terms of weight loss. They're larger doses. You're getting more of that drug, which can lead to more issues. And that brings me to like one of the things I see out there in the world. I see a lot of people taking higher doses than I think they need to be taking because with the clients I've seen, they've seen really good results on small doses. And so then when I see people taking very high doses, I'm wondering why. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have to, but just like my approach with hormones, in terms of like sex hormones, right? Like I'm taking estrogen and I'm taking progesterone. Gosh, my life is so much better since I started taking those, by the way. I'm starting on the very lowest dose and not going up without needing it, right? And same. I don't think we should automatically be taking high doses of a lot of drugs. Anyway, but person to person, everybody's going to be different. David says, it seems like you have to take them for the rest of your life. And that is probably the biggest issue, right? Is that if you lose weight by changing your approach to food so that your hunger is better managed, that's something that you've made like an elemental shift in how you eat that potentially supports you to keep that weight off. If you've lost the weight by changing your body to respond differently to food, and then you take that away, well, now you're kind of a bit up a creek, right? You're like, oh, but now the hunger's returned. And now you have to either learn to manage the hunger, that, again, now it's back. And so now you're kind of starting at square one there. And you're fighting upstream on that, or you have to keep taking the drug. And with that, the issue is this pricey. Even though the prices are coming down, even at the lower price, I think I've seen like $500 a month. That's more than a lot of people can afford for the rest of their lives. So, certainly for something that isn't life-saving. That being said, there are some people I do think whose hunger is such that, and I've met these people, that is such that even with a really solid change in diet, they still struggle to maintain a weight in a range that isn't highly obese. And so for them, it's a discussion they have to have with their doctor, with their coach, with themselves mostly. I mean, 90% you're with yourself, to say like, well, what is the cost of not doing it? What's the cost of doing it? And by cost, I just don't mean just money, right? Because remaining obese has a cost in and of itself, a health cost in and of itself. And so, I'm not talking about the person who is 160 pounds and wants to be 140 pounds. I'm talking about the person who is 300 pounds and wants to be 200 pounds, right? That there's a lot of cost. There's almost no health cost to, a couple of pounds to look different, right? There's really no benefit there except maybe your mental health, right? But you have to weigh all of that. So it just really depends on a lot of factors. And I think that we do a disservice to the world. And I fight against this, like when we have a knee jerk, right? Which I do. Like I just said, anything new, I'm like, I don't like it. But a knee jerk to say, well, it's bad, just do it with food. And I'm like, we have to really consider everyone's perspective here and everyone's experience. And it's sort of like, okay, you guys know, right? When you get, for years, you might have been told, well, it's just calories in, calories out, just eat less and move more, duh, right? And you get mad because you're like, it's about more than that. It is about that, but it's about more than that. And then, so I'm not a fan of that kind of languaging for people, but then I'll hear people say, well, just change your diet, and then you won't need the GLP-1. And I'm like, well, that's like a corollary, right? Because some people have changed their diet. Some people have done things differently, and they still have some issues that are going on in terms of their hunger hormones. And, so I like to keep an open mind, and I have to work to keep an open mind about these kinds of things because, I don't want to take something off the table for somebody in their life if it would mean the difference for them between like a good life and a less good life. So you gotta put it all together. That's my thought. But to Julie's point, concerned about the long-term health effects, that is a reasonable thing to be concerned about. And if you were to say, well, I don't know what Julie weighs, but if Julie was to say, well, I'm able to maintain 200 pounds by eating a low carb diet, and I'm able to have a good life and do the kinds of things I want to do and play with my grandkids on the floor. And if somebody came to me and they said, I'm able to do all these things, I just don't think it's worth it to me, because if I were to take this drug, maybe I'd weigh 20 pounds less, but I'd also be like stressed all the time. And I don't know that I want to pay that much money. I'm like, okay, then it's not worth it to you, right? That is something you're allowed to take into account. That's how we make informed decisions about things. So I think it's reasonable to make that decision. And I also think it's potentially reasonable for somebody else to say, I am miserable every day. I stress out about it every day. My life is significantly less good because I'm always thinking about food, and I can't see, and even if I'm carnivore, it doesn't go away. I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried this. It's also not unreasonable for that person to say, like, I've looked into it and I'm willing to accept that there might be some things I don't know about. To me, it's worth it, right? Those are both valid perspectives. And I think we should all be kind to people in the world, and know that people are allowed to choose for themselves about what is right for them. All right. Can you hear me? It looks like my little earbud died. Anyway. All right. I just droning on about things there. Who has a question or something they want me to talk about, or else we can wrap it up for the day whenever you guys want to. Julie says yes. Yes. I think she means yes. She agrees with me. Thank you, Julie. Anyway, that's what I got. That's what I got for today. Just blathering on about those things. So, yeah. So far, opinions. What have we discussed today? GLP-1s, up to the person. Something you should undertake probably with a coach rather than without a coach if you don't know how to eat healthily, because they don't impart knowledge. Taking this drug doesn't fix your mindset, doesn't fix your thoughts about food, it changes those thoughts, but it doesn't fix I automatically choose good foods all the time. Like one of my relatives, had said, oh, I just eat smaller quantities of these things. And I'm like, well, how much protein are you actually getting? And it was like, none. And I'm like, yeah, gosh. So yeah, you gotta go into things with open eyes. Hormones, yay, was my answer to female hormones, the sex hormones that I've been on. So the changes I've experienced are my mood so much better. So much better. My itchy ears and my itchy skin, so much better. My hair is growing back. Yay. And the constant, one of my weird symptoms was, that feeling, your ear, you got like air in your ear when you go up or down in altitude, that clogged ear feeling. I was getting that just constantly. And that I haven't had it at all since I started on the hormones, which is very exciting. So all of that is awesome. So I've been very happy with my experience thus far. For those of you that don't know, I used a company called MIDI, MIDI, which is a telehealth medicine company. They take insurance. It cost me almost nothing. I paid my copay for the visit. My prescriptions have been, I think I paid like $26 a month. It's been really easy. Yeah, so that's been super, super awesome. That's pretty much what my reports for the day are. I just talk about the things you guys want to talk about. If you have questions, I'll answer them. If not, I'll just blather on about my life. So there you go. Okay. I hope everyone has a fabulous week, and I will be back hopefully next week.